Hi everybody, welcome back. We're looking today at Jeremy Duff, Elements of New Testament Greek. We have got to the end of chapter 9, and so now we're just going to do a few practice exercises from this chapter, and then we're going to move on in the next video to chapter 10. So without further ado, let's have a look at this one. This is from page 108, section A, question 1. Autos de Jesus uk epistiousen he auton autois. Just read that again. Autos de Jesus uk epistiousen he auton autois. Okay, so our nice regular rules here. Find the verb first. So here we are. This is epistiousen from pistuo, I believe. Aorist, sigma suffix, epsilon augment. The N is the third person singular ending. So he believed. I know the footnote says something else. Don't panic. We're coming to that, and that's the reason why I chose this one. One of the reasons. What we've got here, uk negates the verb, means he did not believe. There we are. So uk epistiousen, he did not believe. Now let's just find the subject. This is all fairly straightforward. We've got Jesus there, so Jesus. And we've got autos de Jesus. Now this is somewhat intriguing, and this is one of the reasons again why I think it's good to look at this one. Autos Jesus, this is the third person pronoun in the emphatic position. Go back a couple of videos if you want to check that out, the use of the pronoun self, same, or as a pronoun. We've got autos used as a pronoun down here. We've got here it's Jesus himself. So himself, Jesus, that's the word order you use in Greek, but it would mean here Jesus himself. So Jesus himself did not believe. So that's one way of translating this. Now, a couple of things we need to check here. First, let's get to that footnote. This is a relatively unusual usage of pistuo, which means not believe, but entrust. You might say it's something like allow himself to be believed, but it's not quite that, is it? In English, entrust and trust or believe look etymologically related. It's not entirely obvious quite how the meaning is related in Greek, how one derives from the other, and to be honest, I don't know. But what this does illustrate is the fluidity and flexibility you get with the meanings of Greek words, just as you get that same flexibility and fluidity with English words. And if you think for 5 seconds, you'll be able to think of plenty of examples. So here's an example where you're starting to get used now to the complexities of the Greek language, and words don't always mean the simple things that you've been used to thinking of them as meaning in the dictionaries or the lexicons you've been using. So Jesus himself did not entrust. Come to this in a second. First, I want to think about this little word here, de. You know that de can mean and or but. And so maybe we translate this here just and or but. But you also remember that it can be used to indicate a change of subject from the previous clause or the previous sentence. And that's what lies behind Duff's alternative translation in the back of the book here, where he's got an alternative which is something like, but as for him, Jesus did not entrust, and so on and so forth. It's some way of indicating that the subject has changed. Now just think about that. One way of translating this would be to place the accent on the autos and make de into just an and or a but, and Jesus himself did not entrust, and so on. Another way would be to read de as indicating a change of subject. So for example, the disciples did such and such a thing, but as for Jesus, he did not entrust himself, and so on and so forth. Now, which of those is it going to be? You don't know. And Duff is deliberately, I think, introducing this complication here to highlight for you the kinds of complications you're going to get when you deal with actual Greek texts. It's the context which will narrow down the meaning. Even then, it's not always obvious, but to know what the range of meanings and the possibilities are is very, very worthwhile. Just for simplicity here, and to save space, I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to go with, but Jesus himself did not entrust, because that seems to me to capture the contrastive sense of de, and also to keep autos as an emphatic pronoun. But again, that might be wrong in certain contexts, or at least might not be so vivid or such a good way of representing the meaning of the Greek. Okay, but as but Jesus himself did not entrust. Okay, well here's the final little bit of the sentence to make sense of it. He auton is the reflexive pronoun, and it means himself. Notice it's the object of entrust. Notice also that this himself and that himself are different himselves in Greek, although we use the same English word. We use the same English word to mean Jesus himself, emphatic, and Jesus did not entrust himself, pronoun. But this is the reflexive pronoun, which is different in Greek from autos. So, but Jesus himself did not entrust himself, and then this, by the time you've got through all that lot, is strangely straightforward, isn't it? Third person plural pronoun in the dative, so it's to or for them. And in this context, it's fairly obviously going to be Jesus did not entrust himself to them. Autos de Jesus uk epistusen he auton autois. Give me a moment and I'll wipe this off and we'll do another one. Okay, let's have a look at this now. Number 4 on the same page, page 108. Bit longer this one, and this one really is flexing your muscles with the verbs like erkamai and ruamai, deponent verbs, which again you've learned in the last couple of chapters or so. So here goes. Kai kontai palin eis hierosoluma, kai ento hiero peripate hot Jesus, kai kontai pros auton hoi iudaioi. Won't read that again, a bit long, but it's fairly straightforward. Just highlights a couple of things it's worth remembering, which you do know, but you may have forgotten because it's a while back. Let's go for the verbs. Kai kontai comes from erkamai, erketai, erkamai, erketai, erkometha, erkeste, erkontai, third person plural, so they are coming or going. And, give you that for free, and they are coming or going, palin, again, and eis hierosoluma, that of course means into Jerusalem. You recall that there are two words for Jerusalem in Greek. There's hierosoluma, a neuter plural word with a rough breathing, and then Jerusalem, which is a feminine, indeclinable word with a smooth breathing. They're about as common as each other in the New Testament, 60 or 70 times each. Eis hierosoluma, into Jerusalem. And they are coming or going again into Jerusalem. Kai, and en to hiero peripate hot Jesus. And another kai here, and you've got another verb, so let's just do this clause. Peripate means literally to walk about. So peripate is he, third person singular, walks about, or he is walking about. He is walking about. Sometimes in the New Testament this is translated to live. That is to say, it's metaphorical. You walk in the sort of Psalm 1 sense of walking. I walk in the counsel of the wicked, or the counsel of the ungodly, or in the counsel of the righteous, not what Psalm 1 says. In this case, however, I was supposed to train of thought there, thinking about the Psalms. In this case, for reasons that become obvious, it's actually just sticking with the more literal meaning. Little prepositional phrase here. In governs the noun in the dative. To hiero comes from hieron, the temple. He is walking about, and who's he? Hot Jesus. So Jesus is walking about, or Jesus walks about. So let's pop this back over there. Hopefully the arrows won't get too confusing. So, and they are coming or going again into Jerusalem, and in the temple Jesus is walking about. And another one of those. That pen is dying, isn't it? Off we go. let's go blue. Contai, same as up here. They, oh, this is much better. They are coming. Another prepositional phrase. Pros auton, to or towards him. And who's they? Well, it's, in this case, oi, eudaioi, now in the nominative, plural, going with the plural subject here. So, and the Jews are coming to him. Okay, now, that's actually not very difficult, especially if you've got the hang of these deponent verbs. You've got a couple of things to think about. One's very simple. Contai, is it coming or going? It could be going here, of course. And again, context, context, context is the thing that's going to determine that for you. Nothing else is. Coming or going. Erkomai can mean come or to go. That's the first thing, which is fairly simple. And so let's imagine a situation in which they're going to Jerusalem and the Jews are coming to him. That means that we're adopting the perspective of being with the disciples. So we are going, or I'm with the disciples and they are going. Maybe I'm one of the crowd that's following Jesus in Luke's narrated journey to Jerusalem. They're going again into Jerusalem. In the temple, Jesus is walking about and the Jews are coming to him, as of course happened when Jesus entered Jerusalem. The other interesting thing here, and I do want to highlight this for you, is this is all in the present tense, which looks a bit odd, doesn't it? We don't speak like this very much, although actually we do. And I'll tell you where you'll hear it. If you listen to slightly highbrow radio programmes and TV programmes in which historians talk about things that happened in the past, you will notice that they quite often talk in the present tense. King Henry VIII takes the throne and marries his first wife and so on and so forth. Now, what they're doing there is they're using the present tense in English as a way of describing past events. To me, I always think that sounds slightly odd. I'd rather they use past tense, but this is my own preference. But in Greek, you have to get used to it because people use the present tense quite a lot to describe past actions. So if you read this in a Bible, you might well find that it said, and they were going again into Jerusalem. And in the temple, Jesus was walking about, and they were coming to him, thus retaining the aspect of the present form of the verb, present tense, the continuous aspect, but recognising that the present tense is used to refer to past actions. This is sometimes called the historic present, or I think better, the historic use of the present, because it's not a special form of the present tense. It's the same form of present tense as you get everywhere else, but it's being used to denote historic past actions. So that's what's going on here. You will see that occasionally in the New Testament as we move towards it. And again, Duff is preparing you for the realities of reading the New Testament in Greek with this example. Give me a second and we'll come back and do one more. And finally, number 9, a bit more tricky, English into Greek. So let's take it steady. This is my commandment. Have love for one another because you are my disciples. One clause at a time then. This is my commandment. Well, here's the verb. Just go nice and steady. Is Amy A estin esmen ester asin. This is its third singular, isn't it? So Amy A estin. Bing. Got one word right. Now, the next thing to spot is that this and my commandment are going to have to match in gender as well as number and case. They have to match in case, remember, because that doesn't take an object in the accusative, takes a complement in the nominative. So my commandment is going to be in the nominative, and its gender will then tell us the gender that we need for this. So commandment, just take a moment to remember what commandment is. Of course, you remember, it is the word entolere. And there are two ways of writing my commandment that you've learned in this chapter. You could write he entolere mu. That's the way that I tend to feel sounds most instinctive to me. Or you could write he emer entolere. Just glance back a couple of pages and you'll see the distinction between this Emer is the feminine nominative singular form of emos, meaning my. It's the adjective which is used just like a normal adjective, like the good commandment, the my commandment. Works in exactly the same way. So my commandment, so what's this going to be? Well, this is going to be the feminine nominative singular form of the word for this. Go back and look at the video from a couple of weeks ago, this and that at the start of this chapter, and you'll remember that hutos is the word for this, but that's masculine. If we're looking for the feminine, we want how ter estin hot entolemu, or her emer entire. This is my commandment. That's the first phrase. Now we come to the beginning of a quoted section here, direct speech, and therefore, although we've got no quote marks here, we're going to be beginning this with a capital letter, and what we want is the verb have love for one another. The verb we want here is from echo. We want the imperative. Notice also that we probably want the plural imperative. No, rather we certainly want the plural imperative. For one another implies that whoever says this, Jesus presumably, is speaking to a group of people. Plural imperative. Probably we want the present and not the aorist as well, because this is the sort of thing that Jesus would want to emphasise. Do this in an ongoing sense, not just do it without emphasising that ongoing character. So we want echo, no, ekete. Ekete, the plural present imperative of echo. Have, love, that's fairly straightforward. Everybody who's not learned Greek knows that agape is love, and therefore agapen is the accusative singular. Have love. Now, for one another, you rack your brains and you think, oh, how do I say for, and what does one, how do I say that in Greek, and another? Didn't I learn something about another? Yes, you did. You learned that the word for another is the word allelos. Allelos. Allos, other. Allelos, another. One another, sorry. Allos, other. Allelos, one another. Now, how do we say for one another? Well, it's very simple. We want for, tells us that we want it in the dative, and one another, plural, means dative plural. Ekete agapen allelos just means have love for one another, where for one another is translated allelos. Simple. Okay, finally, because you are my disciples. Well, we'll leave the because for a second, come back to that, draw a circle around it to remind me so I don't forget. You are very simple from Amy, a estin, esmen, este, because you want the plural, you are. There's more than one of them, so este. And then so my disciples can be written in the two ways that correspond to my commandment here. Just with the added complication that disciple is one of those words like prophet, prophetes, which is masculine but looks feminine. So remember the word for disciple is mathetes. So mathetes, matheten, mathetu, slightly odd genitive singular, mathete, mathetai. That's disciples in the nominative plural, which we want because of Amy. So mathetai. And if we're going to say it in this way, or in that way actually, we want the nominative plural article, but it needs to be masculine, because though it's got a funny feminine looking ending, it's masculine. So it's hoi, mathetai. That you are the disciples. How do we say my? Well, we either put nu on the end, the disciples of me, or we put the equivalent of emer in the adjectival position, remembering that it would have to be plural to fit with this. So it would be emoi. You are the disciples of me, or the my disciples, my disciples. So that just leaves us with one word, because, and if you're like me, you'd have jumped straight in here and you'd have thought, because, that's a bit like for. Let's just say gar. Oops, I'm lazy, can't write today. And you'd be right, you'd be fine, except that Jeremy Duff has chosen to highlight in his answers at the back that there's another word that means because in Greek, which is the word diote. Either would be fine, either would pass a test if I were marking it, but you now know that here's another little bit of complication in Greek, just as there are multiple words meaning the same sort of thing in English, because, for, so there are multiple words meaning the same sort of thing in Greek, and their meanings don't perfectly overlap with English equivalents, so gar or diote will be fine. Duff goes for diote. So, hauter estin her entoler mu, or her emer entoler, echete agapen alelois, have love for one another. Diote, or gar, este hoi mathetai mu, or hoi emoi mathetai. That'll do you. Well done indeed. Getting to the end of this video, if you made it this far, we're going to move on in the next video to the very next chapter. Chapter 10, where we're going to be looking at complex sentences. So don't miss out. Keep going, 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, 5 or 6 days a week, and we will have you reading the New Testament in Greek in no time at all. God bless. Bye for now.